The title of this book is so good that I bet with you right now that 90% of people that quote it haven't actually read the book. This book's called Still Like an Artist, and it sits on every creator's bookshelf. It gets quoted all the time on social media, but there's a problem. A lot of creators think that this book is a permission to just copy every single aspect of someone else's work. It truly became the ultimate excuse to skip the hard work of actually trying to create something original online, which unfortunately says more about us than it does about the book. But there are a few people who actually understood this book and applied the concepts, and those are the ones we can't stop watching because they have learned how to steal the concepts behind what works and not just the ideas. And even Picasso, yes, that Picasso, has used the same principles to basically give birth to an entire art movement in the 1900s. Stephen King once said that fiction is the truth inside the lie, and I think that's what's happening with this book right now. At some point, the catchy title or the lie has become the whole story, just a slogan for people to wear and share on the internet. But the real truth of this book was buried just a little bit deeper, but not that much. It's just that I think people haven't even read the first chapter, to be honest. As you see, the full name of the book is Still Like an Artist, 10 Things You Didn't Know About Being Creative. And I bet with you right now that most people haven't even read the first thing, let alone the other 9. Simply because the title is so compelling in this book, like it's so well done, that you assume what the book is about even before reading it. And I think that's part of the problem here, because the whole misunderstanding around this book, the whole misuse of its title, it's all answered in the first chapter. Because there's only 3 things you need to understand to fully grasp the whole idea of this book. You need to understand about how to find ideas worth stealing. You need to understand the concept that nothing is original, and you need to understand a little bit of genetics. It's going to make sense. Right at the beginning of the book, there's a diagram that looks like this. You start with the main question, is it worth stealing? And if the answer is yes, you move on to the next thing and ask the question again. And if the answer is no, you also move on to the next thing and ask the question again. But that alone doesn't explain what exactly do they mean by stealing. So for that, we need to go to the next thing, which is the concept of nothing is original. In this section, the author tries to explain that all good artists understand that nothing comes from nowhere, that all creative work builds from something that came before. And to illustrate that point, he mentions a French writer named André Gide, and I probably butchered his name, but I quote, "Everything that needs to be said has already been said, but since no one was listening, everything must be said again." And that quote right there is the summary of basically 90% of all good marketing on the internet right now. People presenting old ideas in different and unique ways, or combining multiple ways of telling about the same idea and calling it original, because it is. That's what being original means. Which brings me to the cherry on top for you to understand this book: genetics. Much like your dad and your mom made you, you and your partner will potentially have a kid, and so on and so forth until the end of eternity. So collecting ideas to make something original works in the same way. Kind of. There's another illustration here to explain this part. So this is your family tree of references and ideas. So you start with one artist or thinker or writer or whatever role model you really like, and you learn everything that is to know about that person. Then you find 3 people that first person loved, and you learn everything about them. Then you repeat this process as many times as you need to build a full-on arsenal of ideas and references across a bunch of different things. And eventually you can use all of that knowledge to kind of create your own branch in the family tree, because you were essentially building this like wide net of ideas and remixing them into something new. And that is how you steal like an artist, not by simply copying people on Instagram or sharing the title of the book. And most people can't be original simply because they lack that arsenal of good, timeless, proven ideas to build upon. And I believe that that's the main thing the author was trying to do with this book, not give you permission to copy other people, but to give you a call to transform different ideas into something new. Social media culture took the title, but not the practice. So all along, it was never a problem of getting inspiration from a lot of people. It was a matter of digesting the information. And unfortunately, no algorithm can do that part for you. But here's the thing though, You don't become original by avoiding the influence, but by going deeper. So you take Ali Abdaal, for example, another YouTuber here on the platform. He didn't invent productivity content. He just layered his life on top of it, making it unique. And a lot of what he talks about in topics like productivity and meta-learning is very much inspired by the work of Tim Ferriss, for example. But he was able to remix those topics, those old topics, through the lens of the doctor turned creator. And he brought the whole teacher energy to a whole broader niche. Casey Neistat, who I often mentioned here on this channel, had something similar going on. He basically transformed vlogging. And vlogging wasn't new at all. But when you combine his inspirations like film director Errol Morris, skate culture aesthetics, and that Nike ad pacing, you get something that screams it was made by Casey. But perhaps one of the greatest examples in history of someone stealing like an artist comes from Picasso in the early 1900s. Because around that time, when he was visiting Paris on a museum, he came across a collection of African tribal masks. That collection has completely blew his mind. And he took a lot of the forms and distortions of the human figure and just let it deeply influence the way he deconstructed the human face in his work. And a few years later, he painted Le Musée d'Avignon in 1907, a revolutionary piece that basically helped give birth to Cubism. And it was nothing like traditional Western art at the time. It was more aggressive, more fractured, and most importantly, it was unmistakably his own. So Picasso has absorbed the logic, he used the raw material as influence instead of a template, and the result wasn't an imitation at all. It was transformation, and it sparked a whole new Western art movement. That is just some of the examples of the power of stealing like a true artist. The good part of this is you can apply this concept in your own life. I'm going to give you my own example and hopefully you can learn something from it. Because for me, it all comes down to two major things, which is taking notes on everything and just exploring a bunch of different stuff. I take notes about ideas that I find everywhere, from books to movies to other YouTube videos to art to music. Literally every time that I hear or see something that I know I can riff on later, I stop whatever I'm doing and take notes, either on my phone, computer, piece of pen and paper, doesn't matter. I think I've talked about this before here on this channel, but don't trust your brain for taking notes, please. It can be a screenshot of something, a quote in a book, a phrase, whatever, a random image, doesn't matter. My philosophy is that I trust my taste so much that everything that catches my attention is worth exploring a little bit more. And the second thing that I do is that I explore things that I'm not really familiar with. I think I mentioned about this in my video about multiple creative passions. I'll leave the link in the cards right here and also in the description if you want to watch that. But actively trying to understand the world around me is super important in coming up with different ideas. Because for me, at least, there's no creating without learning. Like, it goes hand in hand. It is a major part of what I do here, not only to create content, but in my work, in my newsletter, in my business. Because when you surround yourself with different ideas and different sources and you synthesize those things into something new, you're basically exercising what we just talked about in the beginning of the video, building your family tree of ideas and references that you can pull from. I think I revisit this book at least once a year, and I highly recommend you reading it, and I mean actually reading it, not just sharing the title on the internet, especially if you're in any creative role. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to grab your copy. And I hope this video was helpful to you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts here on the comments, because I actually answer to every single one of you. And click right here to watch the video that I made on multiple creative passions. I think it makes total sense after this one, and I think you're going to like it. So yeah, I'll see you there in a minute. Have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.